everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 78 in the series. I'm calling this one Lost and Found, and I hope that'll become clear soon. I'm coming to you from Urbana, Illinois, where it is a beautiful Sunday outside. It's actually one of the first hot days we've had, so I was out skirting fleece today. We got the chicks moved from the garage out to the big chicken run. We have some plans to get some gardening in. Yeah, it's just one of those days. It's beautiful, it's sunny, and there's not really a cloud in the sky. So it's, you know, for a pandemic, today was a good day. And I say was because it's the afternoon now. We're winding down a little bit, headed toward dinner time, and I thought I'd sneak in the yarn room and do a little podcasting and spend some time with you guys. I do hope you're well in the pandemic and hanging in there, and maybe making some things, maybe hanging out with some loved ones, cooking good food, whatever it is that you're doing. I hope you're enjoying some part of it and staying safe and well. I'm coming to you from Urbana, Illinois, so we are on lockdown still until the end of May. And after that, I'm not sure all that much is going to change for our family because we are, you could call us paranoid, you could also just call us practical. You know, we're still disinfecting our groceries, and we're probably just going to stay in, and that's the way we like it. So yeah, that's our plan for the rest of the foreseeable future, I guess. And I'm a professor at the university here at Urbana, and we just finished our semester, and my plan is to teach online in the fall if I can. So we'll see. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. So that's a lot of info, especially for those of you who might be new. If you're new, welcome. It's lovely to meet you. This is a podcast about lots of knitting, modification, design kind of work, a little bit of spinning in there. And today I have some more info about Shorn 3, which is a farm to skein yarn that I'll be producing. This will be the third year in running, so I'll tell you a little bit about that. And if you're coming back, it's always good to see you. Thanks for coming back. I looked over on YouTube the other day and I could not believe we were over 7,000 subscribers. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. That's crazy. So thank you all for hanging out and for sending messages and getting together with each other and hanging out in the Ravelry group and all that kind of good stuff. It's a lovely community, and I'm really just happy to be part of it. So today is Lost and Found. Let me tell you what we're going to do. I've got a finished object, which is Will O the Wisp, and this has a happy little story that I'll talk about. I have some skirting info because I was out there skirting Kathy's fleece for the next Shorn yarn, so we'll pop over to the skirting table for a little while. I have a little bit of Lost and Found. I want to just talk to you about how I organize my patterns, especially those that are all finished, and show you a little bit about that. And I found my blanket. I found my blanket pattern in looking through that box. There's a little bit of a sad story about that pattern, and I'll tell you about that too. So maybe we'll just jump right in with Will O the Wisp. And Will O the Wisp was the featured pattern on the cover of, this is Nomadic Knits issue 6, which covers, let's see, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama. So that is Will O the Wisp on the cover, and it is by Melissa Kemmerer, and it's a beautiful little mohair lacy number, which I don't usually knit too much of. So this came to me in a kind of happy accident. Amy of Conjure Yarns was actually running a giveaway, and lo and behold, I won the giveaway. So I think I told you a couple episodes ago that this came in the mail, and I was pretty happy to receive it. And I just kind of fell in love with this little bolero thing on the front, and I just decided I really wanted to knit with some mohair, so that's what I did. And this is the result. It is a really cool looking garment with this beautiful lace kind of pattern as the main feature of the back, and it has, you know, it does have armholes, and it has this cool kind of knit pearl ribbing running around the outside. I'll show you what it looks like on. There's no up or down, really. There's no right side there's no top or bottom. So it fits really nicely over one's shoulders, and you can see that it sits just above my natural waist right in the back, and I think you can see the really pretty lace work. I think it's just a really cute little number. I like never imagine myself wearing too much super feminine kind of stuff, but I really kind of dig this. And it's a little warm and it's a little wispy and it's kind of perfect for summer and really quite cute. Easy to take on and off, as all those kind of good summer garments are. And it's knit in, I knit this version in Tanis Fiber Arts, 2 different yarns. One is her mohair, which is this. And Tanis Fiber Arts, in case you don't know, is an indie dyer out of Canada. And this is the other yarn that I use. This is her pure wash fingering. So Tanis Fiber Arts, I've been following her around for quite some time. And she's an indie dyer out of Canada, and every once in a while she does pop-up shops. She has some bases and some colors that are kind of always available, but then she does pop-up shops for different colorways. So both of those colors that I just showed you are actually in the Silent Movie colorway. And you can see they have some nice resemblance between them. And I decided, I can't remember why or where. Oh, maybe it was the Descent pullover that just came out, and it's knit with yarn held double with mohair. So I kind of started looking around for a lot of mohair, and I kind of got obsessed with mohair because I've never actually knit with mohair before. And Tanis Fiber Arts a few months back was doing a post-Christmas, post-holidays kind of pop-up, and they just happened to have some pretty mohair in there. So I grabbed a skein of this, and that's all it took, is 1 skein, and you can see I have a little bit left over. And then a skein of this pure wash fingering. And the thing about pure wash is that it's not quite superwash. It uses an enzymatic process, so it's more environmentally sound and less chemically than a superwash yarn. So the yarn actually does feel a little woollier. It has a little more tooth to it than your regular superwash yarn. So if you're interested in pure wash, Tanis Fiber Arts has it. O Wool has some pure wash yarn. It's something to look into if you're interested in kind of some of the properties of superwash, but a different actual process to get there, and they use that enzymatic process. So, and I think there are a couple blogs or podcasts out there that have discussed the difference. One of them is probably Anna, the Dunkelgrund podcast, which I've referred to on here a couple different times. So I knit this out of those yarns, and the main yarn, like I said, is that beautiful mohair, and you get this really pretty repeating lace pattern, which is easy to memorize and quite easy to execute, even if you've never done a lot of lace, and even if you've never done like a lot of mohair. Mohair kind of sticks to itself. You can see that even in the skein, as if you tried to like pull it apart, it really just wants to, more so than other yarns, it wants to kind of become itself. It's kind of like the Borg of yarns, for those of you who watch Star Trek. So it's easy to knit, easy to memorize, and you basically make a big lace of rectangle, a rectangle of lace, or a lace of rectangle, a rectangle of lace, and then you kind of fold it in half, sew it up a little bit, and then pick up your stitches and do your ribbing for the outside. And in the photo, I think you can see they chose to do more of a contrast color for that ribbing, a little bit of a deeper purple than the mohair lace that they did. And I just experimented with putting together both silent movies, the fingering weight and the mohair, to see what would happen. And I quite like the result. So this is held double, and you can see it still has a halo to it, but it has the kind of more structural properties of the fingering weight yarn than the mohair, because the mohair just really wants to like do its own thing. So this was a simple little knit. I really didn't do any modifications. I know, weird, right? But it's a recipe basically. So you measure a couple different things on your body, and then you use those measurements to determine your cast on and determine the length of your rectangle, and to determine how many stitches you pick up, I think, around the outside. I'm trying to remember the rest of it, but basically it's a little recipe. And so you measure your body, and then you create what you want it to look like. So I had a lot of leeway here to decide like how drapey I wanted it to be. You could make it longer, you could make it shorter, you could make it more of a little bolero, you could do all kinds of things with this pattern. So it's really quite fun, and I would highly recommend it. So this is Will O the Wisp by Melissa Kemmerer, and here's their version of it. Again, I'll show you with that contrast purple, and hers sits a little bit lower than mine does. I quite like mine where it is, which is just over my natural waist and just a little bit free and easy. Yeah. So that's kind of a little bit of a find for me. I never thought I would knit a little shrug bolero thing. I wasn't sure how I felt about mohair, but I quite like it now. And as I said, that Descent pullover, I think it's an Andrea Regal pattern. Really want to knit that with mohair. But mohair is kind of expensive, especially if you're holding it double. It's almost like you're buying two sweater quantities worth of yarn. So I'm still on the fence about that. And in the pandemic, we're kind of trying to save some money and be a little bit more careful about our resources. So I might have to hold off on the mohair sweater for a little while until things settle down. But that seems like a smart thing to do. So another thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is what I'm currently working on. And one of the things I'm currently working on is going to be a sweater for my dad, but the yarn for that has kind of been held up in the mail for a lot of reasons that also include the pandemic. So instead, I was thinking to myself, man, I should really pick up that blanket I was working on, which was the Persian Dreams worsted weight blanket by Denise Hope, which I set down years ago for a very good reason. And I'll show you the very good reason right about now, which is that my dogs, who's sitting on the floor right now being a perfect angel, decided that patterns were fun for puppies, and pretty much ate through. I've taped these together now. Pretty much ate through the entire pattern. This one looks salvaged because I taped it all together, but you can see the full extent of the damage here. Yeah, that's about the size of her mouth, probably, just a good chomp. So I was so distraught by the fact that she completely destroyed my pattern, or if that's in my mind, that's what I thought, that I kind of set it aside, and I knew I had it in a little blue folder because this pattern involves like 8 or 9 different colored charts that I had to go to the library and print with a colored printer, and it was a massive undertaking to print the pattern in the first place. So I kept it all very neat in this blue folder. And at the same time with this pattern, I had all these plans to have 2 different versions of it that I'm working on. And there's a podcast episode from way back that's called A Tale of Two Blankets, where I talk a little bit about the 2 different versions. One with the multiple colors that, as the pattern suggests, the pattern includes different colors within each hexagon of the blanket. And then another version that's more stained glass kind of version that has a black background and uses a gradient Knit Picks chroma yarn as a way to kind of just fill in the color work without having to constantly change colors. Well, when you do that kind of thing, when you switch up all the colors from the blanket, and you have, there's a big chart that comes with this pattern that tells you how many balls of yarn you'll need, how, yardages and stuff, and then you write on your pattern on separate pages all the different ways that you're going to combine those colors together, and then your dog eats the pattern. It's a little bit disheartening because those notes don't exist anywhere else except on the written pattern. Foolish me, I know. I should have just put it in Ravelry, put it in a computer document, anything other than just like paper with a puppy. Tink has been totally forgiven though, I just want you to know that. So because I knew that this ripped up pattern, that I didn't even bother to tape it back together because I was so distraught by the whole thing. I didn't even bother to tape it back together. I just put the pieces in the blue folder back where they belong. And when we moved, I could have sworn that I shoved the blue folder like in with all my books and magazines and stuff. I have torn this yarn room apart 2 or 3 times. And I was like, I'm never gonna find this blanket. It's a whip, it's a pandemic right now. I wanna just finish it. Like, let's, what am I doing? Couldn't find it. Well, I finally just dug into my pattern box to find something else to work on, and I found the pattern. So I was like, yay, I found the pattern, thank you. I had taken it out of its blue folder, clearly, because I couldn't find the blue folder. I had folded it, like the pieces of it, and just put it in my pattern folder. So everything is actually there. All my notes are there, and when I taped it back together, it's not actually in terrible shape. So I have the pattern, and I've started working again, and this is the Persian Dreams worsted weight Blanket by Janice Hope. This is my third hexagon, I believe, and I've been labeling them with which number in the sequence they are. And this, as I said, it's a Knit Picks black yarn in the background and then chroma for the color change, and I think chroma does a nice job of bringing out all the really prettiness of her pattern. So I think there are 24 hexagons in total. I've got 3 done. They really only take about 3 evenings of knitting because it's a worsted weight version. She has a fingering weight version of this pattern, which, whoa, not going there right now, but the worsted weight version I'll take on. And then I'll show you the back. It's color work, so it does have floats, but it only has 2 colors, just the black and the changing chroma yarn. The only thing that's fiddly about this pattern is the increases in that initial part, because you start here with this tiny little number of stitches and you're increasing out. So that first inch or so of the pattern is a little bit fiddly, but once you get it on the circulars and do a little magic loop, it comes out just fine. So that's my happy story about finding my pattern that was ripped up by the dog. But let me show you my pattern box. So I thought you guys might be interested in this. This is my pattern box. And this is not just because I moved recently. This is how I do things. So in the pattern box, every time I complete something, it's a big box. Every time I complete something, of course it goes up on Ravelry, but it also goes in the pattern box. So I'll take, for example, this is a test knit I did for Albina recently. I'll take the pattern itself, the printed pattern with all my notes on it. I'll take my ball bands from the yarn so that I can remember how many skeins I had to use. And I'll take, if I have a little sample of the yarn or a swatch, I will put that in here. So some of these guys have, sorry about the noise. So some of these have like a swatch inside there, along with the pattern and the ball bands. Some of them have a little bit of extra. This one looks like from my Meltdown sweater that I made with Cami Noises yarn. I kept a little bit of each color in there just so that I would know what colors I used. So then I put everything in a plastic bag because I'm terrified of moths and other creepy crawlers, and if there's any kind of yarn or swatch or any other kind of woolly thing in there, I just want to make sure that it's safe. So then I pack them all away in here, and clearly I need to get a bigger box because these are a lot of the finished patterns, but I have a whole stack down there of patterns that have been completed that didn't require yarn, so they're like shawls or hats or something like that. They didn't require yarn. I have a whole stack of patterns that didn't require swatching, so that's just the actual paper pattern with my notes on them, and they don't fit in here anymore. So I obviously need to get a bigger filing system for all the projects. But that's my pattern box, and I kind of like keeping double records after I just told you I don't keep double records. Keeping a record on Ravelry and then keeping it in the project box, and then as I told you last time, I have that bin of yarn that's kind of like leftovers for sweaters. So if anything goes wrong, usually I have an extra half a skein or a skein of yarn for that sweater in the bin, and you can use that to do all kinds of wonderful things. So yeah, that little pattern box kind of saved my butt because it turns out I was more organized than I thought, and I actually put my ripped up doggy pattern in the pattern box and found it later and taped it up, and yay! So it was kind of like a win-win, finding the pulling the pattern box out for moving and finding the blanket pattern in there. The other thing I've been doing in the yarn room over the last couple weeks, and maybe you guys are doing this too, is kind of like consolidating knitting and doing a spring clean. So I've been washing and drying sweaters slowly, like 1 or 2 at a time. Once they're dry, folding them up and putting them in the sweater bin because we are headed into spring and summer here, and it's a great time to wash all the woolens that you won't need, and you wash them so that when you put them away, any if you have any moths or creepy crawlers or anything in where you live, they're not going to be attracted to all the stuff that's on your sweaters, because it turns out they eat the wool, but they're really actually attracted to like little bits of skin or food or other things that are on your sweater. So if you can wash the sweaters and then put them away, then you're in great shape. So I just washed a whole mess of shawls in the last couple days, and I think I have just our winter hats left over to wash, so that'll be the last little bit of spring cleaning for us. So the last segment here for today, I thought I'd take you out with me to the skirting table And Spencer made me a new skirting table, which I'm so thankful for. He is like super builder man. And he made me a wider, kind of bigger, more sturdy skirting table so that I can throw Kathy's fleece out on it, take care of caring for them and getting them ready to go to the mill, and you'll see a lot more about that and hear a lot more about that. And then I'm going to package them up and hopefully send them off to UPS, through UPS to the mill next week if I can finish. So I'll take you out there and then come on back to say goodbye. I hope you enjoy the little field trip outside to the skirting table. Merlin's gonna be a little bit smelly. Oh jeez, it's Merlin. Merlin is a ram. He's the ram. He's the ram man. And this isn't even his whole fleece, I don't think. This is just part of his fleece.
So what's important about him being a ram?
Smelly. Because they like to, you know, pee on themselves and do other things to themselves. Make themselves extra smelly for the ladies. Whew! Merlin. Oh, man. Because usually, I mean, like, I like the smell of fleece. But... Merlin. Stinky man. So I'm going to be skirting Merlin and maybe a couple other fleece for you. These are Corriedale and sometimes Teeswater or Corriedale Teeswater crosses. And this is the fleece that's going to go into Shorn 3 that should come out sometime in 2021, depending on the pandemic and how fast the mill can work and all that kind of good stuff. Ooh, Merlin. Okay, so we got some second cuts. You can start to see them here. This stuff's all got to come out. It's all the second cuts. See, this is the bottom of the fleece, like that was attached to his body. And so when the shear came along, it did like a double pass, and that cuts up all these little bits. They got to come out. And then we gotta get all this stuff out, which is all the dirty stuff, before it gets to the rest of it. Not dirt, like this kind of stuff is just like dirty tips, like that'll wash out. But this stuff over here, where you've got some kind of dusty, dirty vegetable matter stuff in there, you don't want that to get in the rest of the fleece. Some of the staple length will be a little too short for the mill too, it looks like. This is fine, because the mill can handle, I think, 3.5 inches or more, so that's fine. But some of this looks like it's more like 2 inches, so we'll have to see about that.
I think this is the 4th or 5th fleece Melissa has been skirting. Is that what you're doing? Skirting?
Yeah.
Cleaning? De-skunkifying?
Skirting.
And this is the sniffy one. Like, you can really smell it. You pull this kind of thing out, baby? It's all green right here.
Laying in the grass.
You don't want this kind of thing in your sweater?
Anything that's like really gross, just gonna go on the ground. We'll probably sweep it up and put it on the plants later. And stuff that's maybe potentially salvageable, especially for someone who's like a hand spinner. I tend to save that kind of stuff. This is off, I think 2 or 3 different fleece. There was about this much waste that I think is salvageable. I've got some folks in the guild who can take this and they might be willing to clean it and do the little bit of extra work that it would require to get some of that vegetable matter out of there and to clean it up and use it. Now, some of this definitely doesn't look usable. I might just get rid of that stuff. But there's no reason to waste it. If someone's willing to clean it and use it, I'll try to save it in a bag and keep it for whoever might be willing or interested. So you might notice I don't have the fleece fully laid out, and that's partially because I just have a smaller skirting table, so I'm just kind of going bit by bit through the fleece as best I can. And you might also notice that I have the sheet under part of it still, and that's not on purpose, it's just that he has a really big fleece, so it's going to take me a while to kind of get it all off the sheet, and once it's off the sheet I can kind of pop it a little bit against the mesh of the skirting table so that more of the second cuts and some of the VM will fall out the bottom. That's kind of the purpose of a skirting table, is so that as the fleece is kind of laying there, stuff that's too small and that isn't, you know, stuck in that isn't part of the actual fleece will fall out the bottom, and then you don't have to pick it out by hand from the top. So this one is a Teeswater cross, which means it's part Corriedale and part Teeswater. So you can see this is kind of a nice combo fleece. It's really beautiful, great luster, nice long staple length. Should be a real beauty. All right, it's getting kind of hot out here, as you can tell. Plus I'm greased up with all the lanolin. I got 3 bags full of wool, 2 for Merlin, 1 for this Teeswater cross. And because they're in plastic now, I'm trying to move as fast as I can to get them to the mill so they don't sit too long and sweat and get gross in the plastic. So I'm gonna take all 3 back in the cardboard box and put them inside in the temperature controlled house so that they will stay better longer. The ones that are out in the garage are in cardboard and they're wrapped in sheets, so it's much more breathable until I can get to them. And that has been skirting for a Sunday. So I hope you enjoyed the little tour through this skirting of Shorn 3, and I'll catch you back in the yarn room for the end of the podcast. All right, guys, it has been fun to hang out with you on this sunny Sunday afternoon. I hope you all have something fun to look forward to for Memorial Day if you're in the United States. Maybe there's a barbecue that you're gonna have in your backyard, or maybe you're just gonna sit quietly inside and read a good book or make a good meal, or who knows what. But I wish you lots of peace and happiness in this pandemic, and hope that you're well. Please keep sending messages. Head over to the Ravelry group if you want to talk to other people about making in the pandemic. And otherwise, I will see you in a couple of weeks. Take care.